Hi, friends! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley Ariana, joined by the wonderful Steph Sanchez on a Wednesday afternoon. I don't know if we've ever streamed on a Wednesday. I know we've done a couple of Tuesdays normally and get to enjoy I think we've also done a Friday, but Wednesday is new
Have
for
we?
us. I think
Yeah,
so, like during the
Wednesday's new.
season. But I'm so excited to see you. I know today at 4, you're going to be doing a watch along to episode 1 of the Receiver series that's on Netflix, right? Have you watched it already and going to watch it with fans, or are you going to like instant react to it?
No, I haven't watched it at all, so I'm trying to keep it that way. It's been kind of
I'm not
difficult
gonna.
to see people like talking about it and like already posting reactions to it. I'm just like, no, don't
I
don't
did.
tell
I
me
posted
what's
like
going on.
I posted on Twitter like one comment about it, but it wasn't about the 49ers wide receivers. It was like I watched episode 1 and then it was like a preview into episode 2, and it had to do with Jimmy Garoppolo, and I just found it funny. But no worries, I'm not going to try to spoil it for you. For anyone who is watching along and would like to know some of my reactions to it, I might do a little video later, but I'll probably do one tomorrow after I've watched a couple episodes of it. Give everyone a chance to kind of see some of it so we can all discuss it. But so far, I think you're really going to enjoy it. So far, I've really liked it. I'm interested. I'm thinking, I'm like, does this spoil it? I don't think it does. The first episode so far has been like very focused on Debo and Kittle. And I didn't watch quarterback. So I don't know. Like, I'm wondering, is it going to be like, I kind of thought they would follow all of them every episode. And I'm wondering, because I haven't watched episode 2 yet, if that's going to be just like not about the 49ers, because they took up most of the screen time for episode 1. Now, if they're all just happen to be like that, and because the 49ers do have 2 players on it, so maybe they just get more screen time than everyone else, I'm not gonna complain. But that was something I noticed. I was like, this is like really Kittle and Debo centric when it's supposed to be about like everyone. But kind of moving off of that, since you said you didn't want spoilers, I hope that wasn't too bad for you. It was it was something I noticed. Okay, I did write down one question from it, but I'll ask you next week. It'll be exciting because we'll both have watched it, and I'm such a nerd that I literally took notes on some of the stuff that they said in there. But there's been a lot going on with Brandon Ayuk, and it seems to be kind of slowing down. I know that just on, I think Monday it was, he had posted a picture of the Commanders, and he's been doing a lot of stuff on TikTok and all that. But I think with training camp coming up, I've kind of since the start of the offseason had the belief that the 49ers would probably pay him right before training camp. And training camp is coming up. I think veterans report July 23rd. I know I could be wrong, but I think it was July 31st that they signed Debo. I know Nick Bosa was a little bit later in the season, but are you expecting that Brandon Ayuk is going to be a 49er before we get into all the rankings and everything?
I mean, he's gonna be a 49er. That's for sure. Now, whether it's on the 5th-year option or via his extension, that's a different question. I still think that they'll get something done like the week before training camp is kind of what I think, but I don't know. It feels like with each new thing that pops up, I have less and less optimism about that, and maybe think that there's a bigger chance that he'll just play on the 5th-year option.
Yeah, that's definitely a chance. And really quickly, I just wanted to say thanks for everyone who's tuned in the comments and everything. I always appreciate all you guys, seeing a lot of regulars, and I love when all you guys comment. But yeah, it seems like Brandon Ayuk, with at least the latest picture that he had of the Commanders, didn't seem like a big deal. I feel like he just every couple days wants to maybe put a little pressure, keep the media around him. I'm feeling optimistic, maybe is the wrong word. I agree with you. I think no matter what, he's going to be playing. I've also carried the belief that I don't think he's going to hold out so far. And even when he was on that Pivot podcast, to me, it almost made me feel a little more confident that he was going to stick with the 49ers, and kind of really showed that the Commanders, the Steelers, those seem more like ways to kind of gain leverage on his ultimate goal to stay with the 49ers, if that makes sense. And the connection with Jayden Daniels, because they're friends, I imagine like if I wanted to raise at my job and my best friend would be willing to help me out. So I kind of see it like that. I don't see it as I think Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback. I kind of see it as like, this is just a friend of his. Brock Purdy's not in a position right now where he can be doing this. And maybe Daniels feels like, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe he will come here. If not, whatever, I'm helping out my friend. So I'm not too worried about Brandon Ayuk. I am excited for there to be some football. I think that's why I rushed to watch the Netflix thing so fast, because it's exciting to have things to talk about. But going into training camp, which is coming up so soon, crazy, summer's flying by. I wanted to ask you, because Pro Football Focus and a bunch of other websites have came up with different rankings, and Football Network came out with their rankings. So I thought I would ask you, I think it was Ryan G. Hensley put out some head coaching rankings as well a couple weeks ago. I thought I would ask you, do you have maybe a top 5 of head coaches that you would argue? And maybe I should start it like this. Is Kyle Shanahan in your top 5 of NFL head coaches right now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's fair. He is for me as well. Is he in your top 3?
Yeah, I think so. Yep. I'd probably put him second, to be honest with you.
Okay,
Well,
I like
okay, let's sit. Wait. Okay. So, so I actually think that,
and maybe like, are we ranking it like going like what we predict the coaches to be in 2024, or just like based on
I just think
all
so
the information?
far, yeah. So obviously Andy Reid, you put him at the top just based on, his accolades, what he's been able to do with the Chiefs. I know PFF put Kyle Shanahan as second, which I'm not mad at that at all, obviously. But I've said before, and I still kind of believe this, that I think Sean McVay is a better head coach.
I have Sean McVay as number
Kyle
2.
Shanahan. Yeah, I think he's a better head coach. I think Kyle Shanahan is a better play caller, which, there's a difference in that. But yeah, I mean, Sean McVay has won the big one, and just what he's been able to do with much less, I think at times, has been impressive. But with Sean McVay, and I also like John Harbaugh is impressive too, but I'd put him still maybe below Kyle Shanahan. Yeah, so I'd go Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan.
Our first 3 are the same. Harbaugh. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to cut off your final 2.
You can't really argue. I mean, you could argue, but like, I think most people will have those 5, or like those 4 in maybe a different order of some kind.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. A lot of people had just Pro Football Network, PFF, and then also just some fan sites that I had seen. People have Mike Tomlin higher than I would have him, and I don't mean that as like I totally understand him being like a very respectable figure and someone who's accomplished a lot. And I know the thing, like he hasn't been under 500 or whatever, but I feel like Steelers fans the last couple of years have felt like kind of in mediocrity with Mike Tomlin, and maybe whatever he's been able to do. Maybe it's hit its limit in Pittsburgh specifically, or maybe they just need to find that quarterback to really amp them up again. But I don't know. I feel a little bit more down on Mike Tomlin than maybe the general public. And I'm not, once again, I have respect for what he's done. And that obviously needs to be taken into consideration when you're doing head coaching. I think one of my big disagreements with Ryan Hensley's was he had DeMeco Ryans, I think, number 2. And I just didn't feel like that was fair with one. I didn't feel like DeMeco's, he hasn't won a Super Bowl or really accomplished that much as a head coach so far. And then even though he did do well in his first year, I was attributing, one, a lot of that being incredible luck that the Panthers took the wrong guy. And then 2, obviously there is coaching involved in that, but like, I want to see it sustained. And I'm not doubting it. Like I'm someone, and I think 49ers fans specifically seeing DeMeco, his rise from, just linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. Like, I think it's fair to project that he will be good. He will end up being very good. But I'm just saying, I understand why Mike Tomlin is graded highly, because I do think there's something to longevity. And that is kind of my takeaway from DeMeco. It's just like, hey, you got to keep proving that you can do that. It can't just be like, oh, you really surprised us this one year when we thought you'd be really bad. You ended up being really good type of thing. But yeah, so little bit more down on Mike Tomlin than maybe some, but I do feel optimistic about DeMeco, and I understand why Tomlin is ranked highly because of his longevity. I just don't think if I was projecting into 2024,
he's won Super Bowls.
Yeah, exactly. Which is the ultimate, like, it's kind of, I understand that these things are difficult, right? Because there's kind of like a gotcha card where, like, how can you put Kyle Shanahan somewhere if he hasn't won a Super Bowl, opposed to people who have. And I think rankings are so subjective, right? Because it's this thing where you're taking in prior success, and then you're also projecting, like, what do you think they're going to do the upcoming year and in the future? And I think that's where, at least as someone who believes that Kyle Shanahan is capable of winning a Super Bowl in the future, whether it be this year or just within the next, 5-10 years, I do think he'll win a Super Bowl. I think it's hard to kind of balance that, because I have more confidence. Oh, this is maybe an interesting question for you. If you had to bet that either Mike Tomlin or Kyle Shanahan would win a Super Bowl within the next 5 years, which one would you choose?
Kyle.
I think
just because he has the better roster right now. True. So I'm betting on the one that is the closest, and I think Kyle Shanahan has been and is still the closest.
And then I understand people have their doubts. We have Kyle Shanahan is a top 15 coach. He hasn't shown worth a higher rating. I mean, I disagree. Is there even 15? Is there even 15 coaches that have won the Super Bowl in the NFL right now? Is that a dumb question?
I don't think so,
right? No. Yeah. So if you're basing it just on Super Bowls, he would still be higher. And then if you base it on the fact that his offensive system has been applied to numerous teams and he's consistently been in the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, I don't know. I think having, I don't know. Even if I was trying to take away any sort of fandom that I have towards Kyle Shanahan, just being unbiased, I think it'd be very hard to put him lower than, the top 8, top 10. And I mean, I have him at number 3. So I would be open to listening to people's arguments, but top 15 or 15 and no higher doesn't make sense to me. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm open to hearing arguments. I just, even trying to be honest, can't think of that many people that, like Dan Campbell, he hasn't won a Super Bowl. I kind of think that it's going to be really interesting to see that Lions team without Ben Johnson. Luckily for them, and not luckily for the 49ers, when we talk about the NFC, the Lions do have Ben Johnson coming back. LaFleur has, done well, so, impressed last year, but I don't necessarily have him above Kyle Shanahan in any way. I mean, he hasn't won any games where they faced off of Kyle Shanahan. He hasn't gotten his team as much success as Kyle has. Kevin Stefanski, Browns, I don't know what they're going to do with their quarterback. I think the Bills are a good team because of Josh Allen, but I think a lot of people would say Sean McDermott has probably held them back because they've had arguably one of the, most talented. I think to his, if he was playing at his top limit, he could be on Mahomes' level some games, or at very least right behind Mahomes, most, second best quarterback in the league. A lot of times, I'm not saying, I know that he's had his bad games, but I think the Bills put all of their offense on Josh Allen. So I think that McDermott gets some criticism for that. Yeah, I don't know. Even when I'm looking at different top 10 lists, I can't imagine putting Kyle Shanahan that deep or that low. Sorry about that. But yeah, I have McVay a little bit higher due to leadership, success, and I do think he's good with his players. He seems to have a great relationship with them, much like Kyle Shanahan. His coordinators have had lots of success in the league as head coaches. I think both of them came from a great background and have had a lot of success on their own, and potentially the Super Bowl. I mean, it really came down to I was going to say it came down to a drop pick or which one of them got Matthew Stafford. And that is maybe for me why I put Sean McVay right ahead of him. But I think that they're neck and neck. Sorry, ladies, but number 3 is not even close to the correct spot. I'd love to hear reasons and like other people. Like you can't just say no.
Yeah, I want to see Leroy's order. Like
I know, like
I'm open to listening.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
If you have coaches that you put ahead of him, I would be interested, but you can't just say like no. We can look at Ryan's list. Ryan G. Hensley had Mike Tomlin ahead of him. I kind of said why I don't have that, but I do understand that the Super Bowls. So he's someone I could listen to. I said I don't agree with D'Amico Ryans being higher than him. To me, that makes no sense so far in the league. Kyle Shanahan has had more success for longer. Yeah. But anyways, we're going to move on to the NFC and talking about them. But once again, if the comments want to give us names, I'm definitely open. I'm not trying to like say, no, you're wrong. It's just hard to make an argument without like actually having the people that you think might be ahead of him. But when we're talking about training camp and the season starting, I would love to ask you, what teams do you think might give the 49ers a run for their money within the NFC this year? Who do you think? I was just watching, speaking of Netflix shows, did you watch the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders?
No, I feel like there's been so many freaking, like there used to be a show, like a reality TV show about them, and I was like, dude, I'm tired of hearing about the stupid cheerleaders for the Cowboys. Like, oh my God.
I feel that those girls need to get paid. They bring in so much money for the organization. Luckily, Netflix touched on that like a little bit. They were like, these cheerleaders are like doing shows and bringing this organization tons of attention, and they're getting paid like less than freaking fast food workers. Why is this happening? But no, very impressive. I will say all the girls, not to compare myself to a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, but like they all have cheered since they were 0 years old, and I was a cheerleader throughout all of my schooling up until my final years at UCSB. And they had hip surgeries, and it's just you just can't do the splits. It's just, if you do the splits from the time And you can't kick like that. And if you do that from the time you're like 4 to an adult, you're going to get hip surgery. Because I had hip surgery and I felt very seen by all the ladies. Literally, like 10 of them were all like, we all need hip surgery. And like a bunch of them had it. And I was like, me too. I also don't have a labrum in my hip. That's crazy. But
sounds painful.
He's in the middle of making. But anyways, I don't think that the Cowboys are gonna give the 49ers a run for their money. So that is a team that I would take off that I actually felt like was going to be a stronger contender going into last year. I feel less high on them this year. Chad Henderson, like Henderson, Nevada, what's up, says the Packers, Lions, Eagles, and possibly the Rams would give the Niners a run for their money. I think that the Packers are coming in with a little bit of that team morale, vengeance. They definitely are going to be circling the 49ers game. And they're young. What we were saying about them last year was that they are a young and up and coming team. So if they do continue on that trajectory and end up improving, then I do think that team could end up doing well especially within their division. And it'll be interesting to see them in the playoffs. I think the Cardinals, when we're talking about the NFC West, their defense is going to be really bad. But I'm pretty interested in seeing how Kyler does now that he has a solid wide receiver. I felt like they have a competent coach now that's going to give him an actual offense to run. I just think that they're not really going to be a problem this year. But I am interested to see how they play. I feel like they're a team that people are like completely writing off, and I could see them being like 500. I don't think like giving the 49ers a run for their money. What about the Rams? The Rams, is it kind of the same thing? Do they have any sort of defense that you're worried about? I feel like specifically within the NFC West, there's a lot of teams that you're like, yeah, their offense is scary, but I don't think they're going to do anything with the 49ers because the 49ers also have a scary offense. And if you don't have a defense to combat them, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I still think the Rams may be another year away from being like a true threat, but they're good enough that, if the 49ers aren't careful, like it could be a trap game, right? So yeah, I think the Rams are a good team. And I feel like they had a lot of young players, starting for them, last season, who, as the season progressed, like you could just kind of see the growth from those guys, similar to the Packers. And their offense in particular. But for the Rams, it was kind of on both sides of the ball. And so with another year under their belt, when we talk about Sean McVay being as good of a coach as he is, like I'm expecting those guys to, take a step forward. Now they aren't going to have Aaron Donald. I mean, that's definitely gonna hurt a little bit, but I like the draft that they had. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see what they do. But yeah, the Rams have been good at drafting guys and having them ready, it seems like, right away to compete. And like I said, they get better as the season goes on. And Mr. Corey, that's they can annoy the 49ers, not threaten. I think that's perfect. At least this year. We'll see in 2025 what it looks like. But yes, that's the perfect way to put it.
And I especially do, much like we were just talking about head coaching rankings and had Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay right next to each other. There was also a recent podcast that Sean McVay went on, and he was definitely talking about the duel that he has every time him and Shanahan meet up. Now, it will also be interesting because obviously it's, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay are the head coaches, but really it's your offense going against the defense. And the Rams lost Raheem Morris, right? Because now he's the head coach of Atlanta. So it'll be interesting. Not only did they lose like talent on the player side, but it'll be interesting how their defensive coordinator ends up, what type of fight he ends up doing. But yeah, I definitely know that both Kyle and McVay, they have a special gear that they get into when they're going to face each other. So I also agree with Mr. Corey. I think I mean, it depends on what you think threaten is. I think that they could, potentially win a game against the 49ers. I think when I did my guesses for that, I might have said no and had the 49ers beating them. But it's one of those things where it's definitely going to be a hard fought game. I don't think that the players go into a Rams game feeling like, oh, this is a walk in the park. Even if it's supposed to be a down year for the Rams or for the 49ers, they bring it when they're going against each other. Now, a different thing that Corey Soto and then also Mr. Corey said, lots of Corey's in the chat. What's up, Corey's? You guys spell it different ways, though. You guys got to fight. Corey with a Y or Corey with an I, okay? But what about Green Bay? We just talked about Green Bay. What about Detroit? Which one are you more scared of as the 49ers going into this year? Detroit has Jared Goff, but that's fucked up. I mean, they just paid Jared Goff. They think Jared Goff is good, but I still have weird Jared Goff from I don't know, weird bias. Like, I don't even know if it's necessarily fair. I think he's actually played pretty well.
Do you think it's a fluke or something?
Jared Goff and go, oh well, less of a good team. But they didn't lose in the NFC Championship because of Jared Goff. They lost because a ball hit a different guy in like the helmet. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So I think they're on similar like playing ground as far as their feelings towards the 49ers right now, because they both got knocked out by the 49ers in the playoffs. They want revenge. So as far as the effort that you're going to get from each of those teams when you play them, I mean, yeah, it's going to be their top effort. This is their Eagles NFC Championship revenge game, that the 49ers had. And so they'll have that game circled. I still obviously think the 49ers are the better team, but again, it's one of those teams that, you just can't be too careful when going up against them. I think the Packers still, I need to see more growth from the Packers, right? Like, they showed growth throughout 2023, which is why, they were able to get it to the playoffs. And when they got into the playoffs, they looked like they can beat anyone, really. And, even the 49ers, it looked like they could beat them, right? So, I think as long as they've improved this offseason, they could, very well make things interesting. But the good thing is that I think at least the Packers and the Lions for most of the season will be kind of like, fighting amongst each other. They could still both make the playoffs like last year, but hopefully that keeps one of them a notch down than the other, if that makes sense. But Lions ended the season as the more talented team. And, that's why they got a little bit further in the playoffs. I also feel like the 49ers were a little closer to losing to the Lions than they were to the Packers. So, yeah, I think I'd give the edge to the Lions. And I just think they're looking for both teams are looking for revenge, but I think the Lions feel like something was stolen from them. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Do you feel or maybe not threatened, but do you feel like Philadelphia is going to be a team within that conversation at all? It's very interesting, right? Because they were on a huge winning streak, and it kind of now 2 seasons ago felt like the 49ers versus Philly might be this, back and forth for multiple years to come. And then they kind of like nosedived last year, and now it feels like they're not even in these talks. How do you feel about that? They obviously got didn't they get a new defensive coordinator? I don't know what they're doing with their offensive coordinator. And I know that was a big problem for them last year, right? Because they had lost their offensive coordinator and Sirianni doesn't call plays or something, or maybe he does, but then they take it away from him. So
yeah, that's part of the problem. But I just didn't like the way that Nick Sirianni reacted to the adversity that they were facing. Like, I think he showed that he's not as good of a coach as a lot of people were making him out to be, right? And so I think there's holes on that team still as far as maybe the culture goes that will keep them from being a like for sure threat. They're going to be in the conversation, of course, but I don't know. I'm just not as convinced about them.
I'm not either, and I will say, Mr. Corey says Vic Fangio. Maybe I'm a Vic Fangio hater. I will say, at the beginning of the beginning of last year when the 49ers were thinking about getting Vic Fangio instead of Steve Wilkes, and then he ended up going to Miami. I remember even then there was players from starts with C, Colorado. I kept thinking Chicago, and I was like, that's not right. There was players from Colorado
From
that, like,
the Broncos? Or
from the Broncos that have spoken out against Vic Fangio for years and said that he was like a really abusive coach and didn't connect with players well and treated younger players really badly.
He's old school for sure.
Push players through injury and all this.
He's old school.
So I was like, what the heck? Then everyone gets pissed off when Miami gets him instead of the 49ers. And he did really bad. Like, the defense was not good in Miami last year. So I don't know. I don't feel like, I don't know. Maybe this is like blasphemous, because I do think Vic Fangio has like this incredible following. I've heard Jason Aponte, which you do a show with. I think you did a show with him yesterday, but I've heard him in the past talking really highly of Vic Fangio. I know that he has a lot of esteem, but I feel like in recent years, he has not had that much success, and he's had a lot of players kind of not agree with maybe his like old school hard ass mentality.
It could be the coaching style that maybe is just not really clicking with this generation of players. I mean, we've seen that happen. I mean, I feel like that even happened with Bill Belichick, right? Like, and that's a crazy thing. Like, you could be such a good coach and you lose touch with your players, and that impacts the way that you can coach and communicate and relate to your players and the product on the field ultimately. So that is a huge part of coaching, being able to relate to your players and I guess keeping up with the times of changing generations and things like that.
Now, I do know that Philly has like 90% of Georgia players on their team. And from everything that I've heard about Georgia as a college, is they're pretty hard ass. So maybe those players, it'll flow better with them. But yeah, I'm not writing Philly off, but when I think of which teams are going to threaten the 49ers, Philly doesn't come to mind. But maybe, like I said, maybe that's naive of me, and he will end up doing really well. I'm not saying that they wouldn't be hard competition if the Niners were to face them, but they don't feel like something in the way of the 49ers getting back to the Super Bowl, at least for me right now. But I mean, there's lots of argument in that. I like this. People have strong opinions about Vic in the comments. Nathaniel Banks says Vic Fangio was a nightmare for Miami and the Dolphins. I'll always respect him for what he did for the 49ers defense, but they dodged a bullet not making him the DC last year. But then opposingly, last year, Miami was a fluke. Fangio has been elite defensively everywhere else. But even where he's been elite, I feel like players have not jived with him. And I kind of agree with what Steph just said. Maybe the not jiving part is just this new generation. I mean, when you listen to Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, 49ers defensive players talk, they themselves talk a lot about how like they want mutual respect and communication within their coach. They don't want to be coached as if they're in middle school or high school. They are professionals. They feel like they know how to take care of themselves and their body. They want to have, some input. They want to be able to run things that they feel comfortable with. So maybe this new generation, stuff like that doesn't fly as well. But I'm not saying either way. I would agree if we had to point out three teams that will be within the conversation or within the top of the NFC, I would go Niners, Lions, Packers is my order. What would you go for the NFC if you had to choose your top three right now? Which obviously is ridiculous because we don't know injuries and all that. But
right, I'd say the same. I think, yeah.
Perfect.
And then I'd put the Rams fourth. You didn't ask, but I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, you're right.
A little sleeper team.
I know. I definitely, I have a lot of respect for McVay, which nice to see that you also did, because I feel like he's someone who kind of maybe doesn't get talked about in the same way that Kyle Shanahan does. I don't know if that's because Shanahan's offensive philosophy is like so ever flowing throughout the league that there's like not just him as the head coach that you talk about, but you talk about him as the coordinator too. And obviously McVay is also the coordinator, but you don't like talk about it in the same way. I just watched a video for people who don't subscribe to him because he's not a 49er content creator, but Jackson Kruger Sports. He does like little film breakdowns that are super digestible for people who aren't huge into film. He was one of the first football YouTubers that I started watching when I wanted to learn more about the game. And he did analysis on Fred Warner. He actually ranked Fred Warner as the second best player in the NFL out of every player in the NFL. Wow. And like he did this whole ranking for all the for the top 100 players. And then he ended up doing specialized videos. Obviously Patrick Mahomes was number one. And something that he kind of talked about with Fred Warner is just like, he's been elite for so long that it almost goes against him, because you kind of like start talking about the rookie that's playing really well, or the other guy who's like, doing really, like you get accustomed to how good he is at his job, that it's like almost no longer surprising. And so you stop talking about it. But like when you actually narrow in on the success of certain people that have been able to like withhold it for so long, you're like, oh my God, this is so impressive. I just related Sean McVay and Fred Warner there, but I will bring up Atlanta because I don't, unless it was you earlier, I did see a different comment about Atlanta. I just feel like Atlanta, I don't know, maybe it's their draft that was just so laughable, where they ended up wasting a pick on a guy who's 26 and not going to play until he's 28, and they just paid Kirk Cousins $100 million. And I don't know. I do know they have a new coach. They'll probably utilize, they've had really good drafts, but the comment on Atlanta was just that Arthur Smith wasn't really utilizing the players in a way that most people, he was like using them as decoys, which was kind of hilarious. So yeah, maybe they'll I definitely think they'll take a step up this year.
Yeah.
I don't see them as
most improved team.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean threatening.
I don't see them as a threat yet.
Who's their wide receiving weapons? Like, I know they have the tight end,
Drake London.
Okay, maybe they'll be really good. I don't know. Kirk Cousins had freaking Justin Jefferson, and they didn't. I don't know. I think they'll be good. I don't think I'm worried about them. That being said, the 49ers lost to Atlanta when they were like bad. So,
Marcus Mariota.
Things happen. Now, if you had to rank the top position group on the 49ers, Steph, which position group would that be?
That's tough. Normally, I would say the linebackers, because
Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, but
Greenlaw's hurt, so I can't count them right now. I'm gonna either say wide receiver or corner, which is crazy because I feel like saying corner a while ago, like last year, I'd have been called crazy. But I feel like they improved the cornerback room so much this offseason. And there's going to be a lot of great competition. And even still, like, not even counting a lot of the additions, Mooney Ward and Lenore on their own, I think, could carry, the position group quite well. But yeah, I'm probably going to say wide receiver. I'll give that the edge just because, you got BA, you got Debo, Juwan Jennings is a dog. And then I'm excited about the draft picks, like Ricky Pearsall and Cowing, I think, to make some noise this year, and give this offense some new wrinkles. So I think I'm going to say wide receivers, and then I'm going to go corner. Do you want me to rank another?
No, I love that. I like that. I feel like for our top, a lot of our rankings seem to be very similar. I'm not trying to piggyback on Steph here, but I also had wide receivers at number 1. And I'm so excited going into this year with the 49ers cornerback room. I feel like for a lot of under the Kyle Shanahan regime, and even maybe before that, but definitely in the more recent years, even when the team has been good, the cornerback position group has been one that you're like crossing your fingers, hoping no one gets injured because you have no idea they're going to have to call a free agent up. And yeah, it definitely is not only a group where it feels like the starters are really good, but they also have depth that you're excited about. So I agree. The cornerback room excites me. I do have the wide receiver group number 1, imagining that BA comes back. Cause like I said, my position is that he will be on this team. Yeah. And that's not doing the thing that Netflix did where they made the tight ends a wide receiver. That was very funny that when you watch it, you'll see that they try to like add those in there, and then it was just, you're just like, wait, they are different. But yeah, I would unfortunately have tight end towards the end of my group rankings, much like linebackers, where the one guy that can play is incredible and a standout and could be potentially one of the best players on the team. But then you look at the depth and there's just nothing there. And you're like, all right, well, that's terrifying. Even more so maybe at tight end than linebacker, which maybe, I don't know. I actually feel like that is so funny. Those two position groups, like the dichotomy of that, of having like potentially the best tight end in the league and then no one, and potentially the best linebacker in the league and then no one. Luckily with linebacker, the idea is that Dre Greenlaw will be able to come back. But yeah, I'm not super stoked on Campbell, not super stoked. Okay, for training camp, which once again coming up, Veterans Report July 23rd, so very soon. Who are 3 players that you're excited to see, watch, look out for in training camp? It can be the rookies, it can be older guys. What are you excited to look for?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Ricky Pearsall, of course, just because like we've heard so far that he can get open, right? I want to see him going up against Mooney Ward, and I want to see him going up against Lenore. I don't know how often we're gonna get that matchup, but I would like to see it. I would like to see it.
On the opposite side of that, not to totally interrupt you, but they just drafted what is it? Green? I'm blanking. They just drafted Renardo Green. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see him go up against the 49ers starting wide receivers.
Yeah, that's another guy that I'm looking forward to seeing. Just because also we've heard nothing but good things about Renardo Green, and I want to see how he does against. Hopefully, we get to see him against Brandon Ayuk at some point in camp, right? But if that doesn't happen, I want to see him against some of the other top wide receivers. I really, really hope he can go up against Ayuk though, just because he'll be able to cut his teeth against a wide receiver 1 and just see how he does with that. I'm also looking forward to seeing Leonard Floyd in this defense and just how he looks opposite Nick Bosa, because I do have some pretty high hopes for what Leonard Floyd is going to look like in this defense. And then Devondre Campbell, honestly, he's talking up having fun again and all this stuff. I want to see that translate to better play, right? So hopefully, obviously he's not Dre Greenlaw, but hopefully he could fill in some of that while Greenlaw is out. And so Devondre Campbell could be an interesting player, I think.
He's someone the 49ers are going to want to be able to rely on. So if that's true, I know that there was kind of rumors that he's been saying that for the last couple of years. Like apparently last year, he also put out a tweet being like, oh, I feel better than I ever have. But if that's something that's honest and the 49ers can find a good way, and I don't think that it's wrong to assume that the 49ers could bring the best out of him. We've seen that happen with so many players that they've revived that have had, potential, but then maybe not performed as well as they have or in the past or as, as high as they could have. And then they come in for 1 year and they end up doing incredible. So yeah, if that's a position that, aside on the opposite of Fred Warner, that they can have someone who can not be Dre Greenlaw, but fill in well, that, I mean, is so helpful for the 49ers for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also looking forward to, let's see, Jair Brown. I mean, like, I think he's gonna make a big impact in year 2 for him. So I just want to see how much more of a command he has in the safety group, just because you hear him talk and he sounds so wise already, and like he sounds just like such a confident guy, and like he's been playing in the NFL for several years already. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do in his second year and how he kind of helps lead some of the younger guys like Malik Mustafa, for example.
Definitely. And Gammon and some other people were asking about Samuel Womack. He was, I mean, I think a fan favorite. I think it makes sense that he's a fan favorite. A lot of times that he got opportunities, he made excellent plays on the ball. And I think he's been on special teams. He's also made plays on the ball on special teams. There has to be something that we as fans aren't seeing. I know that Richard Sherman came out because he had gone to some camps and said that Samuel was struggling in the run game. There must be something that we're not seeing, because I agree that when given the opportunity, at least in my eyes, which, I'm not a coach or anything, I've been like, wow, he's doing great. But for him to consistently not make the roster, they were playing Ambry Thomas ahead of him and stuff like that, which people are obviously criticized Thomas. There has to be something we're not seeing that's making it so maybe he's more of a practice squad / special teamer. That is what I would expect from him, just because I feel like he's made the most of his opportunities with what he's been given. So if this is where the 49ers see, the most that he can do, I don't anticipate a breakout year at this point. Now, I'm not saying that's not possible, but yeah, I don't think he's going to end up being like a starter or something like that. I don't really know what the thing is. Like I said, my only Mr. Corey says he's getting cut. I don't think he'll get cut. I mean, maybe he'll go to the practice squad type of thing. He has been impactful on special teams. And I know the 49ers, sometimes they like guys like that. I think that has helped everyone's favorite running back that doesn't actually get the ball, Jordan Mason. He's been really impactful on special teams. So obviously 49ers value, maybe you can't make a total impact in your position, but if you're making an impact on special teams, they're going to keep you. They're going to be more motivated to keep you on the roster, or at least promote you on game day. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be, a starter or anything. But I also don't. Do you think he's going to get cut? How do you feel about Samuel Womack?
I think he has an uphill battle. He has the fact that he plays special teams on his side, that could potentially give him the edge just based on who he's competing with for that one roster spot, for example. But it's not looking good unless he makes like significant strides this year.
Yeah,
I don't know if we can bank on that.
I completely agree. And then some people were asking about Ambry Thomas. I think it's the same thing. I think a lot of these guys, you have 2 to 3 years, and if you're not really making an impact by then, unfortunately, there's going to be rookies that then have promise that the 49ers, or that not even the 49ers, but teams are going to be incentivized to try to see if there's going to be potential there that they can grow on. But yeah. Did you give a solid 3 players? I'm sorry, I've been going back and forth looking at the chat.
I gave about 3 players. But just on the last point that you said, I think this year it's going to be more important than in years past for the 49ers to reserve roster spots for
younger
guys who younger guys who they think could grow and that they can develop, because guys who have had that opportunity and haven't done anything with it so far, like, why are you going to continue to keep roster spots for them? That's why, like, the 49ers have lost certain players after roster cuts, certain promising good players at roster cuts, because they have to cut them. They don't make the 53 just because of the roster politics thing of it all. And then those guys get picked up and they end up being starters like on other teams, or like really nice depth pieces on other teams. And you're like, damn, like, imagine like the 49ers could have actually used someone like DJ Reed or something like that, or I'm forgetting, there was like an offensive lineman last year too that actually I think he ended up getting cut, if I'm not mistaken, the offensive lineman. I don't think the 49ers picked him up, but just there's examples out there of the 49ers maybe missing out on some guys that they had to cut just because they had to keep some other guys.
I'm excited. Now, I don't know how much we're going to be able to see aside from kind of just sizing them up next to each other. I know that for offensive linemen, there's like you're not exactly replicating football. I imagine they'll put pads on like a week or two after the first week that they report, but I don't know how all out it is. But I'm interested to see Pooney. He's someone who does excite me. I'm interested to see Deebo Samuel. I feel like everything we've seen.
I don't know how I didn't say that.
It's just him like training in crazy good shape. I know he was with Ricky. He was with Jacob Cowing. We've seen different, whether it's him solo or him with the younger guys. He seems like he's in excellent shape. I have often referenced this since the draft, but Mike Silver wrote this report kind of being like, if it ends up being a contract year for both Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, what does that end up meaning for the team? And I'm, as someone who just fell in love with Deebo in that 2021 season, as so many people watching probably did, because how could you not have? I'm excited to see a highly motivated Deebo. He confirmed himself that there was talks of trading him, and deals almost done before the draft. And I'm very excited to see Deebo play. And so I mean, obviously, I feel like the rookies are what we're most excited for. Like I said, Renardo Green, sizing him up against the 49ers wide receivers. I do feel like training camp is something you more notice the quarterbacks and the wide receivers than like the D line and the offensive line, because I feel like those things are harder to replicate. You're not necessarily going all out tackling and being forceful in that way. So I feel like when I look at standout players for things like training camp or practices, I tend to go more offensive. And I don't know, maybe that's not fair, but that's just, I feel like it can be hard to size certain people up. Someone earlier said that they hadn't been to a training camp, and I think maybe they were asking me. I might go a couple days. I know I do a show with Marco, and he was saying David, he's a guy on Twitter, I'm blanking on his last name, but he sells tickets. I was going to ask you, Steph, because you've gone, I think, a ton of years in a row. Are you going to be going to training camp?
Yeah, that's the plan. They haven't released, the dates yet, but yeah, I'll be out there.
I didn't mean to completely interrupt you. I just read this and I don't think he's going to be ready by training camp, right? Or is he? If he is, that will definitely be interesting.
No, he's not going to be like cleared or anything. I think he'll be out there probably working on the side field or something like that, still rehabbing. Yeah,
I completely agree. Someone said I'd go to training camp if I was allowed to. I think you can't fans.
Everyone is allowed to.
Yeah, I think you can buy tickets. Now back to the question. I'm going to re-ask you because you were answering when I got distracted by reading Hafunga's name. Did you say you are going to be going?
Yeah, that's the plan. As soon as I find out the dates, I'll figure out how long I'll go. The last 2 years I've gone like all of the dates pretty much. So that's the hope still right now.
There you go. That makes sense. It'd be really exciting. Hopefully you go, and then hopefully I can go and we can maybe try some sparkling water together. Do you have one of those coming out today, Steph, or did it already come out?
Yeah, I did. I'll put one out. And by the way, My watch party for the first episode of Receivers will be at
4, right? I think
6. It's actually going to be at 6 Pacific time. We moved
6.
it so that more of the West Coast folks could join and watch. So 6 Pacific time on my channel. If you guys haven't watched that first episode of Receivers yet, me and Desi are gonna watch it and react to it live. So make sure you're ready to press play at the same time as us.
Absolutely. Everyone make sure to like and subscribe to Steph's channel and watch along with that. Ramelia, he joined in late. I feel like you would have been excited. We were talking up Sean McVay, but then we were kind of that one said that the 49ers were gonna smash the Rams when we went again. We were like, they're not threats. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're not threatened by the Rams.
There was some good and some bad.
Yeah. But you missed we went on a whole, we were talking about we were stealing your content over here. And then Mikey also tuned in late. Make sure to go back and listen to a lot of the stream. We do talk about Aiyuk. Both Steph and I are under the impression that there's no way Aiyuk is getting traded. He's either going to be on that 5th-year option or paid. I'm still, more like 75% he's getting paid. Day 1 of training camp coming in pretty soon. Steph is, leaning towards that 5th-year option or getting signed. But I hope I didn't just say that wrong. Neither of us think he's going to get traded. We went on a whole thing about that. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate absolutely everyone. Ramelia gives us respect. Ramelia, we got to see your head coaching rankings. We both put Sean McVay at number 2, but unfortunately, what's your defense? You gotta DM me on Twitter. What's your defense going to be like this year without friggin' Raheem Morris and without Aaron Donald and all that? Are you going to annoy the 49ers? Are you going to threaten us? Or are you guys going to be 2 wins for us? We're excited to see it. Thank you guys so much. Make sure to, like I said, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I think I'm going to be going live tomorrow with Tom Jensen, NinerCast. He writes for SI. And then later this week with Marco. And Steph is going to react to the wide receiver first episode tonight. I'll be talking about that tomorrow. It'll be exciting. I have questions. I took notes, Steph. So I have questions for you on Monday. So make sure to pay attention during that live. Okay. Bye, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Have a great week.